play. And another foul on board. His third for setting a screen.
Because of physical play, although Jordan Taylor just got caught with a moving screen.
Pick and roll. And a foul. Offensive foul coming up. Ken Valentine standing right there. Says,
Izzo dying for a moving screen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Moving Screen Podcast. I am Brendan Quinn of The Athletic. Trust me, I feel better than I sound. Not by much, though. But so bear with me. I'm joined, as always, with the great Dylan Burkhart of UM Hoops, back home after a month on the road. Dylan, how you holding up, pal? You were sick, but now you look spry even on this video screen.
I have slept for about the last 72 hours, and I'm feeling good. I mean,
coming closer to the mic.
But you can't hear me?
There you go. You're better now. Okay.
All right. It's been a good little bit of time to rest. I don't sound like you, so that's great. And ready to rock out this pod. And it's been a hell of a week in D.C. I feel like we should start with that.
It was a hell of a week in D.C.
The pod is still standing.
Pod stands alone at this point for Final Four. Made it all the way to the last weekend of the year. Michigan fans out there, we're going to recap the season a little bit at the end of this, and we will throw up a little timestamp probably in the.
The first time that you will add a timestamp will be the first.
All right. No.
Whatever, the next time. I can't even speak properly this morning, but So what happened in D.C. this week?
Hold on a second. We got to do our thing.
Oh, okay.
If you guys want to support this pod, best way to do so is by supporting umhoops.com as a subscriber and by supporting The Athletic as a subscriber. So go do that. Okay, now let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
That was my sales pitch right there. That was pretty good. D.C. was bananas. The game last night was one for the ages. When the bracket came up and there was the big hubbub over Michigan State drawing Duke, I was kind of the thought of, if you're going to win the national championship, you're probably going to have to go through that team one way or another. So you might as well just do it, right? And Michigan State, the moment wasn't too big for them. I think after the first couple minutes, it was clear that they could run with them and move with them and play with them, and it wasn't the boogeyman and it wasn't some monster in the closet, and I was just beyond impressed by Cassius Winston, Xavier Tillman, Aaron Henry, of course Kenny Goins, and just an unbelievable performance. I mean, that was one I will remember that being like. I've covered a lot of NCAA tournament games and forgotten a lot of NCAA tournament games. That one is firmly in the memory bank.
So did Kenny Goins lose his 3-point shot, or he still got that? You know
what? It's time for analysis, not snark, Dylan.
That was a week ago. I think you said that on the pod.
I said potentially.
To be fair, I think he's shooting 22% in the NCAA tournament.
This is true.
Hit the big one though.
Hit two big ones.
The step back was almost more impressive.
It was. I said that to Mike Garland after the game, and he agreed with me in full that the step back over Zion, hand in the face 3-pointer that tied it, I think 56-56. That was an unbelievable shot because Duke looked like it was just about at the point of maybe making it a 2-possession game. And it felt like if any team could actually get up to like a 6 or 7-point lead, it'd be really, really difficult to get back. It was such a back and forth second half. And speaking of Kenny's 3-point shooting, check out the story that we just posted up there on his ridiculous journey from walk-on to hero. So go read that on The Athletic.
Go read that. He took a dribble on that shot, right?
Which one?
Dribbled into the step back?
Yeah, I think I don't think that was the move. I don't think he went dribble step back on. I think he dribbled, realized he couldn't go anywhere, had to step back just to get some space, and then just put up a dream.
On the season, how many off the dribble jumpers do you think he's taken this year? We got the stats here.
Off the dribble jumpers. Oh my God. 8.
9.
No.
How many think he made?
2.
2, and one of them was that 3.
Well, there you go.
With 8:48 left in the game. So how about that? That's a big time shot, and that's a shot that it was that shot, and then it was followed by the spinning McQuaid shot.
Yeah.
In the lane, right? Those are back to back, and those were shots that I don't think either of those two would have said that. Yeah, that's in my repertoire before today, right?
No, it was kind of representative of the whole team, isn't it? Like, I said in my one story, like, in what world should this roster beat that Duke roster? They have the number 1 and number 2 picks in this year's draft.
I do think that there's a degree that we should have. I mean, we didn't do a pod before this game, so we didn't talk about it that much in depth. But we kind of should have seen it coming, the way that Duke can't shoot and the way that Michigan State defends the paint as well as anyone in the country. I mean, if you want to just go bang against them inside, they're going to embrace that 10 times out of 10, right? And that's really what we saw. I thought that game was crazy. You were right there. Did it look as physical as it looked on TV?
Yes. Yeah, and they weren't calling anything. I mean, they were just beating the shit out of each other.
The fact that Duke ended up losing because in the end they had too many fouls they had to commit, which was just comical considering how that game was played for both teams. Like, it was just a bloodbath in there, and you want to see the players decide the game, and I like that, and that officiating crew was all top shelf. Like, I think they had some of the top refs in each league, guys that'll probably do the Final Four, and I think they side with just letting them play, which probably worked out for everyone because no one wanted to take Zion off the court. Right. Michigan State obviously couldn't take Xavier Tillman off the court.
Right.
Nick Ward was pretty much played off the court when he was on the floor. Mm-hmm. The fact that it was played like that, though, also I think helps Michigan State because they can play physically interior defense. Like, that's what Michigan State does more than anything, and that's really what has, I think, defined this team is how well they defend the paint and the interior. And Michigan and Duke just can't shoot teams out of that. We should have been more of a, all right, we saw this coming.
Well,
do you agree with that or no?
Somebody here did pick Michigan State to beat Duke to go to the Final Four, but
so someone did see it coming. All right.
But no, on the physical stuff, it's a great point. It'll be interesting to see if that translates over to the Texas Tech game. But for this one, being physical with Duke's best player, Zion, is a game-changing thing. Whereas on the flip side, Duke, it's hard to be physical, I put in quotes, with like Cassius Winston, because if you're going to be just tackling him going to the basket, like Michigan State was just mauling him in the paint, and they just let it go, and they let it go on both sides. Go ahead. No. What do you got? I was going to say I had a bunch of, I assume, Michigan fans all complaining that Cassius Winston was getting away with push-offs all game, and I know Mike Krzyzewski was complaining about that as well. But I'm like, maybe it's just because I just watch him all the time, and he does that all the time. Yeah,
you could tell that. I think they told Trey Jones to kind of flop a little bit because there were like 2 or 3 plays in the second half where he kind of sold it, and they didn't call it, and then Coach K was going off on the refs about the same call. Because, I mean, it is one of those things where he does it all the time. Mm-hmm. So we've seen it. But you could definitely tell that Jones was trying to sell that call. He just did not get it. Winston is the best point guard in the country by a long shot. I mean, the way that he's able to control pace and everything else on the floor, at some of those, his ability to throw a pass at the last second when you think it's impossible to is just ridiculous.
Yep.
Or shoot at the last second. There was the one floater he had where he didn't even really jump.
Yeah.
And it looked like he might have, he was about to travel, and so he just kind of flicked it up and it went in. And then the same play he makes, and he throws an alley-oop at the last second. I mean, it's just beautiful to watch, and that is what is going to control the game. And Michigan State, all year, it's turnovers won them this game.
Mm-hmm.
they didn't turn the ball over, and Duke turned it over left and right.
That lob to Tillman with like 1:17 left.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
He just had that. He had that defense on a string the entire possession. Was just kind of waiting and picked his spot and knew exactly what was going to be there. And let's talk about Xavier Tillman. That was a unbelievably good performance from that guy. To be there in person, sitting courtside, and just to watch his defense on Zion from like almost at an arm's length was incredible. I think he played him perfectly. There were a few times when Zion would get the ball out on the perimeter and he would just kind of intentionally sag back just a little bit, still be in front of him, right, so that he couldn't just blow by, but give him just enough space to kind of tempt him into taking, semi-guarded threes, which, given the options when you're guarding that guy, I'll take that any day of the week. So, a quick jack three, and he got him into a few of them, and then down low, just banged with him all day, was all over the glass, scored, ran the floor. That dunk in transition was stupid. It looked like an NBA basketball player to me. What did you see on TV?
His ability to sag off, accept dribble penetration and then recover at the rim is really stands out. It's almost like it's completely different players, but he was able to do the same thing to Xavier Simpson, if you think about it, right? Like his ability to play onto someone on the perimeter, let them drive into him or near him, and then still defend the rim. He's got like those two recovery steps where he's able to still change shots and alter shots. He's really changed the course of the season for Michigan State with his defense in those situations. When I look at this Michigan State team, I think it's crazy how much they've changed.
Yeah.
Like if you were to go watch the Kansas game, the way they even thought they were going to win basketball games in November is dramatically different now.
Yes.
Every little bit of it.
Yeah. Everything from the Cassius ball screen stuff that they're running to Tillman being this monster to
they don't throw the ball in the post hardly at all. There's no Josh Langford mid-range shots. It's just like this complete, it's a different team.
Yeah.
If you would have told Tom Izzo before the year that this is how they'd be playing, I don't know that he would have believed you. Like, they really got to this point because they had no other option. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean,
it turned out like
Tillman's changed the team. Kenny Goins' three-point shooting changed the team. For a while there, their only three-point shooting was just Matt McQuaid running around hunting shots, whatever he could get. And that's a thing of the past. He just gets them when he gets them, and if anything, they're more often than not in transition. How many set-type plays are just him, running all over the place off back screens and things like that. That's in November. That was half the game. It seemed like, Yeah,
and the emphasis on Winston having the ball all the time, like that wasn't the way this offense worked in January. Even it's just seeing those. Like they don't take mid-range jumpers hardly at all, other than Aaron Henry with a few little floater shots around the rim.
But all the stuff that they designed for him to kind of get off those kind of shallow curl screens that get him right in the middle of the floor with the ball in his hands, like that wasn't a thing.
Well, he's able to get to the rim out of that look, basically with that floater, whereas Langford, that would be a 18-foot jumper on a lot of those actions, right? So they just have come to a lot more efficient style of offense to play, and it all, I think, revolves around Cassius Winston, but it's pretty ridiculous when you think about it, and if you were to go watch that Kansas game, it would look like a different team.
It seems like it was 10 years ago.
You've only covered about 127 basketball games in person since then, so probably actually aged you about 10 years. Cassius Winston.
How about the fact that Duke was literally only 0.01 points per possession, less than State?
It's a one-point game.
That's pretty awesome, though. State was 1.00, Duke was 0.99.
How about the fact that Duke is supposed to be this best team ever, and they were about 0.1 points per possession, or 0.01 points per possession apart from every team they played in the NCAA tournament.
This is true.
Maybe we shouldn't see teams based on what they could have done with their best player playing. Just a hunch.
Okay.
I mean, this Duke team, it never really clicked down the stretch. I don't know. I think that's a disappointment, and that speaks to how important you need to be able to shoot the three in modern college basketball, and Duke cannot. I think you'll look at some of those guys on an NBA roster next year, and they're going to be like, what the hell was going on, and how did this Duke team end up like this? There's no spacing in that offense. There's no shooting. I thought that was a little disappointing.
Right. I mean, it's tough when you're just going to go out and just out-athlete teams, because when you get into the NCAA tournament, it's just not going to happen. That was their second fewest points of the season, I believe. I think they had 66 against Georgia Tech. Michigan State's defense was awesome.
Transition defense.
It was
awesome. And they had a plan that worked. I mean, the way they were able to pack the paint, not let they would kind of overplay on like drive and kick, and they got all those steals that way. It was just a really good game plan across the board, and a lot of that is because Tillman was able to play so well, I would say. Like, if he is not able to make those coverages, then I don't know that you can really play with that game plan, right?
Yeah.
Cassius Winston, is he a pro?
Yes. I mean, is he a starting point guard in the NBA? I don't know. I think he tests the waters this summer. I imagine he will ultimately be back. But, like, if TJ McConnell and some of these other dudes can get run and be productive in this modern NBA, what is run in the NBA right now? I don't understand why Cassius Winston would not be. He can just run slip screens all day and just and pick apart defenses now. And I understand the whole, okay, who does he guard and stuff like that, and his defense isn't great.
He's gotten better on defense.
He has gotten better, and his lateral quickness isn't, off the charts by any means. But I mean, how many do you really need? Are there really lockdown point guard defenders all over the NBA? I don't watch the league enough to know, but if that guy is an NBA basketball player, then I don't know what brand of basketball they're playing.
There's literally about nothing he could do statistically to improve on this year.
This is true.
Maybe a fewer turnovers, right? Like, whatever. He's doing everything, and he has crazy assist numbers. He's shooting, he's scoring, he's dominating the ball. I mean, I get, like, he's always going to be small. He's always going to be slower, but
it'll be
certainly has an ability that translates, if you ask me.
Yeah, and I mean, I have to ask around and NBA folks, but like, I can't imagine it's out of the realm of possibility if they go, even regardless of what they do in the Final Four at this point.
Yeah, it doesn't matter at this point.
If he goes in and has some workouts, like, a couple teams wouldn't give him maybe a late first round grade. Like, I don't know.
He's a great example to me of, like, sort of your predetermined bias. So everyone before the year said Cassius Winston is X, Y, and Z. He's too short, too slow. So they just don't look at what he's doing. Right. And now all of a sudden you're like, well, holy shit, what the hell is all this? No one else plays point guard this well in college basketball. Yeah. Maybe we should have looked at this guy and not ignored what he can do on the court. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
His being short or slow or whatever doesn't really impact anything that happens on the court in college basketball. Trey Jones, everyone thinks is this great point guard. He got played off the floor.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
I mean, that like, and Winston has played just about anyone off the floor this year. And a lot of guys who are faster, bigger, whatever, it doesn't matter.
He assisted or scored on 19 of Michigan State's 30 field goals and only committed one turnover while playing all 40 minutes against a team that essentially is an NBA team.
He's Michigan State's entire team. And Michigan State has won every trophy they've played for this year.
Well, there you go. That's well said. We might cut that out of the story or out of the pod, and I might use that in the story this week.
I'll collect some royalties on those subscription fees.
50 cents per sub.
All right, I'll take it. Anything else you want to talk about Michigan State before we talk a little bit about Texas Tech?
I mean, out of that game,
what about Aaron Henry? Hell of an NCAA tournament after he was really not great late in the Big Ten season.
He's been great, and his defense is just off the charts. I think the moment was a little big last night. It was just offensively when the ball got in his hands. I think his eyes were a little wide. Even talking with some of the guys on the staff, I think they picked up on it pre-game that Gabe and Aaron Henry looked a little juiced in warm-ups, and but Henry's so good, man. I mean, he collects himself, and for a freshman, he's just always where he needs to be. It just seems like his hands are always on the ball. Loose balls, he's always right in there. Big defensive stops, he's always right in there. He's just kind of, it's just like anytime a pile emerges, right, you just see number 11.
So for me, what stands out is he is looking to attack in a way that he wasn't probably in mid-January. Like, he catches the ball and actually is trying to make a play, whereas when he would, 2 months ago, he was catching the ball, overthinking things, not wanting to shoot, but thinking he should shoot, and then he was just kind of caught in this indecision. Now he's just catching it, going, getting to the basket, passing the ball. He's making his threes. I think just making 3-point shots changed everything for his game, right? He's made what? Aaron Henry's shooting 45% from three over the last 10 games. I think that changes everything for his confidence and just his aggressiveness. And I think that has really shown in the NCAA tournament and kind of as a preview of, I guess, what you'll see from Aaron Henry next year. Probably be a pretty trendy breakout player pick in the Big Ten.
I'd say he has broken out.
Well, I think there's a level where he's 13 point per game,
sure.
An actual legitimate, he's scored still double digits in not a lot of games, right?
Yeah.
He'll be a different player next year. He's shown what he can be broken out.
To quote, was that Chappelle's Rick James skit when he's like, cocaine's a hell of a drug, confidence is a hell of a drug, man. And Aaron Henry, when he sees I think he's a dude in general, and when he sees a couple of shots fall though, and the shoulders come back a little bit, and he starts kind of hunting, he's a pro. He's a pro.
Yeah, he has those abilities, and that's what we've seen here. Do you want to talk about, should we get into Texas Tech a little bit?
Let's do it.
So, Texas Tech is unlike any team that I've seen this year.
You saw them in person in Anaheim.
Watched a bunch of film about them, and they're just one of the more unique teams that I think you'll see. The way they play defense is, sorry for Michigan fans that might have already lived through this, but for Michigan State fans that skipped our podcast previewing Texas Tech, everything they do on defense is designed to keep the ball out of the middle and force drivers to the baseline. And once they do that, they do a ridiculously good job of recovering and helping to that baseline drive and in turn forcing turnovers. One of the things that makes them super different than any other team is that they defend the rim like as well as any team in the country, but also force turnovers. Usually only do one of those two things. You look at Michigan State, generally speaking, their defense is great protecting the rim because they pack the paint, but they don't overextend and they don't force a lot of turnovers. Usually teams that do overextend and force a lot of turnovers give up a lot of layups in turn because they're extending so much pressure. Texas Tech is sort of the rare team that does both, and they have really good guards at getting their hands in and forcing steals. They have really good wings and guards at drawing charges. As you do try to go middle, they will draw a charge there. And then they have probably one of the best shot blockers in the whole country in Tariq Owens, who literally led the Big East in blocks back-to-back years and somehow left as a grad transfer and no one seemed to notice, and now he's just dominating at Texas Tech. So their defense, the way I described it before the Michigan game, and I think this is pretty true, is like you look at a team like Michigan or Wisconsin, and they play a kind of defense that lets you run your stuff, but defends it really well.
Right.
And Texas Tech takes you out of your stuff. Mm-hmm. They don't let you run your stuff. And that was really hard for Michigan to adapt to, obviously, and it's pretty much been hard for anyone to adapt to. They've had one of the best defenses in the country in back-to-back years.
So Texas Tech was pretty much the worst possible matchup for Michigan. And the varying ways that they defend ball screens and their switching patterns where you're kind of scratching your head like you just don't see that every day. Was there anything that jumped out to you now in hindsight when almost overlaying what they did against Michigan, right, with what Michigan State does offensively, that you see creating similar issues? If you know what I mean.
The first thing is that I think the way you have to beat Texas Tech is by making a bunch of threes. Michigan obviously went 1 of 19, missed their first 18. That's not going to get the job done. Michigan State obviously has good perimeter shooters. Winston can hit threes, McQuaid, Goins, right? Like they have those options, but their length makes it tough, and the way they kind of swarm to the ball. I guess what I would really worry about for Michigan State is the turnovers, and they are a team that will get into you and really disrupt kind of that ball screen action and will be able to force some turnovers. They can also take away transition offense. They did a decent job of that, especially in the second half against Gonzaga. And they just make it really hard to play offense. And it will come down to, is Winston frustrated by that sort of defense, or can he kind of solve it and figure it out?
So with Winston, we talked about his ability to control the pace, rhythm, flow of the tempo of that game. How much more difficult will that be against Texas Tech? And the way that he's able to kind of, when he controls the ball, that he can almost, you can see how what he does shifts the direction of a defense, right? How is that possible against the stuff that Texas Tech does?
Is it possible? Probably. It's going to be hard, though. I think you look at the defense that I would most compare Texas Tech to in the Big Ten is Illinois, in terms of, like, Illinois is a really bad version of it, but in terms of how they kind of force you into doing some things you don't want to do and really pressure the ball. And that is been a kind of a boogeyman team for Winston over in the past, the way they kind of smothered him with length and forced a bunch of turnovers. So that's at least something to watch there. But going into the Texas Tech game with Michigan, I thought it might just be like a gimmick that you can break. But after watching that defense in person, it is not a gimmick, and they're very well coached, and they're very, like, they really execute their plan. I worry about Michigan State's wings like to drive baseline a lot.
Yeah.
They play that sort of action extremely well. Take it away, and that will be like an issue for, like, you have McQuaid, right? Like, he's going to drive into the paint or drive the baseline, and he's not necessarily going to have those easy kick-out passes. They're going to be swarming to the ball, and they have a lot of length that can take that away.
A few times Michigan State got out on Duke successfully.
In transition.
Yeah. Texas Tech, I imagine it won't be as many opportunities, but
Texas Tech has a great transition defense. Yeah. Gonzaga did get out on them a bit early. The second half, though, they really cleaned that up, and that helped them kind of win that game. I guess the other side of the court is a little more interesting. Like, you don't, well, maybe not as, it's not the highlight of either team, but it might actually end up determining the game. Because Texas Tech's offense, a lot of people say, just okay. They're a good shooting team. They're not a great shooting team. They don't throw the ball in the post. They don't really do any they run their little motion offense, and then they have Jarrett Culver as an option to make plays one-on-one. So it'll be interesting to see, I guess, how those matchups play out. On offense, I'm not sure. Like, Michigan State matches up okay, I'd say, with them, right? Like, you got Jarrett Culver. Who would you say guards Culver for Michigan State? Henry? McQuaid?
Henry.
So that's a little different, right? He's not used to guarding the primary ball screen.
Culver's, he can get pretty physical, yeah.
Yeah.
So I want Aaron Henry's a sturdy guy, and that's not to say that Matt McQuaid isn't, but I just think that Henry's just more physically, just a better physical defender. McQuaid strikes me just more of a very good at staying in front of guys, getting his hands, annoying people. But if someone's going to try to use their body, I want to go with Henry.
Yeah, so Texas Tech, the point guard Mooney is a graduate transfer, kind of a physical point guard. He'll post you up a little bit, make big shots, tough kid to guard. And then Moretti is the Italian kid next to him, basically the best shooter in college basketball. He's like 90-something% from free throw, hits threes, hits twos, gets fouled. He'll probably be a good matchup for McQuaid. No mute button there. We're just coughing live on air.
That one snuck up on me.
The post play, you don't really have to worry about Texas Tech beating you inside, but they will run some ball screen stuff, and Culver is pretty good. One area where Michigan State can really take advantage, and it's an area where Gonzaga took advantage a bit, Michigan just can't, is on the offensive glass. Texas Tech is not a good defensive rebounding team, in part because they have this 6'10" kid who just tries to block every shot and does block a lot of shots. But Michigan State has been dominant on the defense or the offensive glass in the NCAA tournament. Really aggressive. I would look for that as a big area where the MSU can attack.
So, I mean, Michigan held Texas Tech to 63. Is that right? 63 points?
63-44, yeah.
I could look it up. But held them to 63 points, pretty good. Obviously, I don't see Michigan State only scoring 44 points in this game. But, like, what's kind of – do you have a magic number in mind of, like, that, you know, the idea of first team to something is kind of
I don't really look at games like that, but if you want to do the math, it'll probably be, like a 65 possession game. So the team that scores 60, like, it's a game that I think the winner scores just about a point per possession. So what, 66 points?
There you go.
Right, like, it's not going to be an up and down game. Both of these teams kind of have the discipline to play a slower paced game, and we'll worry about taking away transition. Texas, it's going to be a grind. I don't see quite the kind of half in the 20s or teens or whatever it was between Michigan and Texas Tech, but it's not going to be a shootout by any means.
I found it interesting in the Duke game that in the first half there, for a stretch, neither team, but I'm speaking more specifically about Michigan State, was kind of able to, or had much success executing, half court extended possessions. Like, for a stretch there in the game, most of the production was coming on transition stuff or kind of quick shots early in the shot clock, right? Get the best shot you can get and put it up there. When anytime the shot clock got under 15, neither team, like, the quality of both of those defenses was seen in those moments. They're two top 10 defenses playing that game. And, I wonder in this game, who scores more points late in the shot clock. It's probably going to be the determining factor in this one.
Yeah, and Texas Tech, easily the best defense in the country at this point. Like, you look at all the stats, like, their ball screen defense in terms of points per possession allowed is 6th in the country. I mean, basically any stat they grade out in, like, the 90th percentile or better on synergy. So they take everything away. It's pretty remarkable, and you just have to figure out ways to kind of grind out offense. Right. And Winston is a pretty good guy to put the ball on his hands and grind out offense. But I also don't think it's a coincidence that Xavier Simpson played his worst game of the season against Texas Tech. I mean, they had a good defensive plan and they executed it.
I kind of have a feeling. We'll jump the shark. We can get into predictions here if you want, but I kind of have a feeling that this thing might be the opposite of the Michigan Texas Tech game. Point being, I think Michigan State's defense is going to do a hell of a job on Texas Tech in this game. I think they're trending that way. I think they're playing great team defense. Everyone knows their job. They're going to the starters are going to play 38 minutes each in this one again. Everyone's going to talk about Texas Tech's defense and forget that Texas Tech has to score on Michigan State. And that's not easy right now because Xavier Tillman, Aaron Henry, Matt McQuaid, Kenny Goins, and now Cassius Winston to an extent are playing elite defense.
Yeah, I don't see either team scoring much more than a point per possession.
And I think Michigan State having the film of Texas Tech playing Michigan is going to help Michigan State.
In what sense?
Just seeing how Michigan defended them.
That's fair. I mean, I would say the key. I don't think that Texas Tech has the firepower, like you say, to run away with it and win. I think that it comes down to Michigan State being able to score, though. Michigan didn't lose that game with its defense. It lost that game because it couldn't score, and eventually Texas Tech's offense pulled away, right?
And some of Texas Tech's offensive success, I think, came from Michigan going 1 for 19 on threes, and when you cannot make a shot, it makes defense that much harder. So,
exactly.
If they're making a few shots, I bet a few of their defensive possessions are probably a lot better on the other end.
Yeah,
I just don't see Michigan State going 1 for 19, so I think they're going to flip the script in this game.
Sure. I think it comes down to all the stats I would look at are Michigan State's turnover rate and Michigan State's offensive rebounding rate. If they win both of those stats, they win the game. Mm-hmm. That's what it boils down to for me. Pretty simple, honestly.
Sure. Who are you taking?
I will go.
Whoa! This is.
I think Texas Tech. I think they have the better defense, and seeing how they defended ball screens against Michigan and Gonzaga, who are two of the best ball screen offenses in the country, says something about how they match up. And I think Chris Beard is a hell of a coach.
I'm taking Michigan State. I think beyond my theory that this team has pixie dust on it, which I don't know where that is in your efficiency numbers, but
there's a new column on KenPom.
Michigan State has a better offense than Texas Tech. Michigan State has a better offense than Michigan had. Michigan's offense, as we talked about before, had some glaring flaws to it this year that were exposed by Texas Tech. I don't think Michigan State has replicable flaws to its offense. Its efficiency numbers are better. Its star power is better in the fact that Cassius Winston is like one of the 3 best players in the country. Michigan State can score on Texas Tech. I'm not saying they're going to go out and get 1.1 point possession or anything like that, but they ain't scoring 43 points. I think they can at least play their game better than Michigan was able to play its game. So
you see some more along the lines of the Gonzaga game. I mean, Gonzaga has the best offense in the country. Gonzaga ran their stuff. They scored at times, but in the end, they played their, second worst offensive game of the year.
Mm-hmm. Which Gonzaga game? You're confused.
Gonzaga, Texas Tech.
Oh, yeah.
Right, they didn't score 44 points or whatever it was, but they scored less than a point per possession for one of the only times all season.
Yeah, they let Texas Tech score 75 points. I don't think these guys are getting 75 points on Michigan State.
Well, I'm just talking about per possession. I mean, that was a faster game, obviously. Gonzaga scored almost a point per possession, but they'd only score less than a point per possession 3 times all year, and that was one of them against Texas Tech.
Right.
4 times all year. So that's what I look at as more of how this game will play out.
Okay.
And Gonzaga's also a heavy ball screen team, throw the ball in the post a lot of similar elements, like to run in transition to Michigan State. I think that's more the game that you would look at in terms of.
No, I agree with you, and I think they're going to try to play it at that tempo, at that speed.
You think Michigan State wants to run?
Yes, I think they're going to try to play. I think they're going to basically do what Gonzaga did. The difference is going to be that Michigan State's defense ain't giving up 75 points.
Okay.
So, I'm going to say State by 9.
That's a big number.
I know. I'm going 72-63.
All right.
Carve it in.
Lock it in.
What's your score for Texas Tech?
68-63, 64.
Oof. Okay. All right. Well, this will be an interesting pod next week. We got to do an in between one, right? If they advance.
Sure.
I say we do Saturday or we do Sunday regardless.
Sunday morning.
Yeah.
All right.
Either postscript or preview. The Spartans shall determine the direction of the moving screen pod on Sunday. So, okay. Michigan.
Let's get into it.
Michigan recap. First and foremost, I think it was an excellent season for Michigan. What was it, 30 or 31 wins?
30 and 7.
30 and 7. I tweeted the other day their 3-year window. They have the most wins in a 3-year span in program history.
So what, 29 and a half wins a year, something like that?
Yeah, but after the game, I went back and thought about Spain last summer and watching that team where no one could shoot. They were sorely missing the 3 guys that moved on, and you watched the film of all 3 of those games. They looked terrible. It did not look like a good basketball team. And for that group to finish the season in the Sweet 16 with 30 wins, I thought was really, really, really impressive. But at the end of the day, in my estimation at least, I'd be curious for your thoughts. The offense was always going to be the thing that bit him in the ass at the wrong time. And, shoot or shoot, and you got to be able to make baskets. And this team was, these 8-minute spans where no one can make shots that just happen over and over and over again. That's how you're going to lose a game, and that's what they did.
So I wrote a thing on the site today that you can go and read, and it's all about, I guess, reflecting on the season, just some takeaways. I did include something about how bad they were in Spain. You look back at some of the stats from that tournament, or not tournament, but that tour. Brazdakis didn't even attempt a 3. Right. Austin Davis was leading the team in usage in the post. Yeah. John Teskey fouled out of every game and couldn't play. Simpson averaged 4, 3, and 4 and shot 31%. They looked awful. And obviously, getting a head coach back and all of that helps. But you have to kind of think about how the amount that they improved from August to November was staggering. Mm-hmm. And then they started 17-0, and that sort of changed, I guess, perception and expectation on the season. If you start 17-0, there's really only so much that you can accomplish in terms of improving from that point. And Michigan kind of never really did.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know how you could say Michigan was a significantly better team in March than November.
Yeah.
But they also accomplished about as much as you can for a team and not winning a banner or raising any kind of banner or trophy, right? They're gonna finish the year as a top 6 team on KenPom, as good as any of Beeline's other 2 best teams. They were clearly good enough to win the Big Ten tournament, or make the Final Four. They just came up short of the first two and then played their worst game of the year in the regional. So that is a hard sort of year to, I guess, process, right? Like, you didn't really accomplish what you wanted to, but you were one of the 7-8 best teams in the country. Like, what do you make of that? I guess what I would say is the more often you can be this good, the more chances you have that everything clicks at the right time.
Yeah.
And it never really did for this team. But if you're winning 29.5 games a year, it's going to happen, right? Like, look at Michigan State. They've had disappointing losses in the NCAA tournament, but they were good enough to make a run, and then this year they do, right? Like, it's that consistency that I think Michigan has never really had before this time. Like, this is probably like you said, the most consistent stretch of playing that level of basketball. It just they couldn't win the key moments this year. And if you look back, they lost one game to a team that didn't make the NCAA tournament all year. And they haven't lost to a team that didn't make the Final Four since early February. So it's just a weird year. Like, what do you make of that?
Right.
They haven't lost to a team other than Texas Tech or Michigan State since that February 12th game at Penn State.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great point. It's what you're saying is one of the reasons I always I just make fun of places that fire coaches who all they do is make the NCAA tournament every year, because it's like it's really hard to just get there every year, and as long as you do, like, eventually things will go your way or whatever it might be. Like a place like Pitt, like getting rid of Jamie Dixon was just insane. But anyway, this was a team that I think might be appreciated a year, 2, 3 down the road more than it is right now.
And why?
Just in terms of, it was a pretty damn good team, pretty damn good season, and it was more so, it was nitpicked a lot, and it was nitpicked by us, but it was nitpicked as, I don't know, maybe for its deficiencies more than its efficiencies.
It was a better team than its accomplishments, which is a tough way to swallow. Like, what do you make of that, right? Like, there's no award for having one of the, like, the best team doesn't always win the NCAA tournament, and they don't raise the trophy and say, yeah, we were the best team.
Second in the Big Ten, losers in the Big Ten championship game, Sweet 16.
But they're sixth in Ken Pom right now.
And the problem is that now, this is Michigan basketball now, that a Sweet 16 is like, it's just a Sweet 16.
Which is crazy.
So
10 years ago, Michigan made the NCAA tournament for the first time in over a decade or whatever it was.
Yeah.
If you would have ever said that Michigan was just going to be this team that makes Sweet 16s every year and finishes in the top 10 in Ken Pom 2 years in a row, you'd say that you're fucking off your rocker.
Right.
And this team shouldn't have been good. That's what I think gets lost is I never expected this team to be this good for a Beeline team that it's his he's only had one worst shooting team at Michigan from 3-point range. And stat I looked up in my article today is their transition offense, I think, will always be the undoing for this team, and that was really kind of what never worked. They could never get any sort of transition offense. They were finished the year like 233rd in transition efficiency. They'd been in the top, I think it was 15 for 3 years in a row, and the top 50 for like 6 years in a row. And on the year, Michigan was 24 of 89 on transition threes over 37 games. The year before that, they were 61 of 155, and they shot 40% compared to 27%.
Yeah.
So that element of, if you're going to have such a good defense, and you can't, think about how just killer a stop in a transition three is. And this team never had that. And that, I think, will be always what they can never figure out. I don't really know why. Even most people on this roster this year shot worse from three in transition than in the half court.
So I got questions. Do you think that the last 2 years, now, just if you look at why last year's team was able to do what it could do compared to what this year's team's ultimate limitations were, i.e. shooting the basketball, do you think anything gets altered or changed or looked at differently in recruiting in terms of the types of players that Beeline is bringing in?
I think that what Beeline prioritizes in recruiting hasn't changed. I think the last two rosters are a product of maybe altering those priorities a bit at a certain point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like Xavier Simpson and Charles Matthews were not really guys that Beeline would have prioritized. And they kind of happened because of happenstance, with the Winston recruitment, with Matthews transferring.
Mm-hmm.
And they've changed it into this defensive identity of the team. And they won 63 games over the last 2 years. So it clearly worked. But I think that it's getting back to getting some more shooters in there. I don't think that they're like, well, we don't care if you can shoot now. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think it's just like, I don't know if there's any play, like, if you can't shoot, I don't know if you get a scholarship.
And somehow Charles Matthews and Xavier Simpson did, which is what I'm kind of getting at.
So, I mean, it was a weird team. It was a passing thought where, does he go out looking for more snipers and stuff like that at this point where it's like, as opposed to a guy who can defend but happens to be able to shoot.
I don't think he ever stopped
looking
for more snipers.
Maybe learn how to play defense.
That's never changed.
I don't know.
Both incoming recruits are better shooters than defenders.
Mm-hmm.
I guess one of my biggest takeaways, I'll ask you, what do you make of the freshman class this year?
It's pretty hard to gauge when only one of them really played.
Yeah, I think that stands out as why this team never really made a leap. And I think that you look at this freshman class other than Prestakis, and it's a pretty disappointing haul overall. Otis agrees, apparently.
Otis missed me. I was going a long time. He needs some attention. So in a perfect world, I think they thought Brandon Johns was going to give him more this year. And I also think in a perfect world, Brandon Johns would never have spent more than 2 minutes working at the 5. Because he's a 4. He's not going to be a 5. He's never was going to be a 5. And they needed him spending all year working at the 4 spot so that he could actually be serviceable late in the year. Do you disagree?
I think you're
making faces. You're squirming.
I just look at Johns, DeJulius, Castleton, Nunez. 3 of the 4 got opportunities at one point or another and just never really seized the opportunity. I think that is a kind of like the one thing you look at and say that's a bit scary moving forward. Not that they can't become better players after their sophomore year. In their sophomore year. Look at Xavier Simpson. Like, you're saying the same things. You're bringing in a grad transfer. But I wonder if what happens with that class, and it's a make or break summer for some of those kids, I think.
Mm-hmm. Do we talk attrition?
Yeah, we can talk attrition. I guess building off the freshmen, you look at Michigan State, Gabe Brown, Aaron Henry playing their best basketball at the end of the year.
Yes.
You look at Purdue, Hunter and Wheeler are playing some of their best basketball. I would look at one of the reasons that Michigan never really found that next step late in the year was that they didn't find something new down the bench, right? Like, they were just the same 6 guys that they were all along.
Yeah. And that's part of the reason, like, of what I was talking about with Johns is, maybe if he'd spent the whole year in the one to just worrying about being the player that he actually is, as opposed to being tried to turn into something else. And I get why they did it, right? Depth at the 5 was the biggest issue that we talked about for the first half of the year. So it makes sense to try to force kind of that square peg round hole thing. But in the long run, I feel like if he had just been focusing on being the player that he is, maybe he does get that late season role or figure it out a la Gabe Brown or whoever. So, yeah, they needed more, and I think Colin Castleton's going to be a star.
Yeah, if I had to bet on one of the 4 non-Brazdeikis freshmen breaking out next year, it would be I would put 80-90% of my chips on Castleton.
It's actually an interesting spot where I wonder what kind of looks they do rotation wise this summer and going into next year. John Teskey's going to play 33 minutes a game next year.
Yeah, but I think if you could play John Teskey 30 minutes a game, like that's just better. Having Castleton as a reliable he played 1 minute in most of these NCAA tournament games, right? I mean, I think.
So you think 30 and 10?
It still would be a legit 10 minutes per game from Castleton would be a real thing. Yeah. That would change sort of the house of cards where if Teskey gets 2 fouls, the whole game goes out the door, right? That was a big issue for this team all year.
Yeah.
So you want to talk attrition?
Attrition. All right. So Charles Matthews, in all likelihood, barring something unforeseen, played his last game at Michigan. Great career. Lots of wins. So kudos to him. He'll be celebrated, I'm sure, on his way out. Jordan Poole and Iggy Brazdeikis, I think both test the waters. I don't know if I was kind of waiting for Poole to have like back-to-back games in the postseason that, go 4 for 6 on threes in 2 straight games, and all the scouts were like, "Oh yeah, I remember that guy," and suddenly he's a first-round pick again.
Do we want to hit on the dates here? So April 21st is the deadline to enter your name in the draft. May 29th is the deadline to withdraw from the draft. And there are some different rules this year where you can actually basically work with an agent and they can pay for some things and set up some of your workouts and stuff of that nature. The whole nitty-gritty of what all of that means is a little bit hazy, and I don't even know if all the agents know. But there's a good article on ESPN with Jonathan Gavoni that outlines a lot of it and has some information there. But April 21st, everyone has to declare. May 29th, which is 10 days after the combine, is the deadline to return to school. And I would be pretty surprised if Poole and Brazdeikis don't both go through that process.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think it's more, what do you want to put? Let's put percentage chance on each going.
Staying in the draft?
Staying in the draft.
All right, you go first.
I will say Iggy, 60% he stays in.
Okay.
JP, 50-50.
I'll go Poole 60, Brazdeikis 40.
Interesting.
What's the bigger? Okay, go ahead.
I was gonna. Are you still talking about those two? If you're making,
yeah.
I was gonna ask about transfers. So go ahead.
If you could have one of the two back in your beeline, which one?
Iggy.
Yeah, I think that if you look at Iggy's game and how many clear, I guess, flaws, for lack of a better word, there are in like areas that he could improve this year, and how productive he was this year, you would really be, I think Beeline would be chomping at the bit to coach him up for an offseason and turn him into the player he thinks he could be.
The way he was playing at the end of the year, and just his upside, like I think he can dominate games at this level. I don't know
if he learns how to pass, he can be a Big Ten Player of the Year candidate.
Exactly, and that's what I mean. Like, I think at this level, he can really be the difference between the first weekend and the second weekend, or the second weekend and the third weekend. Jordan Poole, I'm not sure about that. Maybe he could be a first team all league guy and play consistently game in and game out. But I think Ignas Brazdeikis can be the difference in games day in and day out. So yeah, if I'm Michigan and I have to, and you're telling me I get one or the other, that's where I would go.
For sure. Transfers, I think you look at transfers and you look at how few minutes the bench played, and you start to think that one or two transfers could be more than a possibility.
No, without a doubt.
Right? Like, writing's on the wall for some people, and if you're only going to play your top 6 guys and you're not going to be in that top 6 guys next year, you have to make a hard decision.
Yeah, and I mean, these guys, we can name names. I don't think we have to beat around the bush. We're adults here. Like, these guys are all going to have to sit down with John Beilein, right? Everyone has your postseason meetings, and this is the way it goes. And you have real conversations about what you're doing well, what you're not doing well, and what your future is, and what has to happen for you to see the court. Austin Davis is a guy that's going to have that conversation and decide what he wants for the rest of his college basketball career. I think we know what Austin Davis is. He knows what he is personally. And he will have a place in that program if he wants it, right? I think that if he wants to finish his career and get his Michigan degree, which is a big deal to him, he will have that option. But if he wants to go play, right? Like, you're talking about a guy that dominated high school basketball and is used to shooting the ball 25 times a game and kind of being a basketball player, and he doesn't get that opportunity here. So it might be, he has to make the decision if he wants to down transfer to a place where he'll have the opportunity to get minutes. I think there's going to be interesting conversations with maybe an Eli Brooks, maybe an Adrian Nunez, guys who.
Maybe a David DeJulius?
Yeah, David DeJulius with there's other bodies coming in. There's bodies in place here. What do you want to do? It's not always just a matter of where they fit in the rotation here. Some guys are okay, and really enjoy their college experience and want to stay where they are and stay with their guys, and that's totally fine. Other guys want to go get opportunities somewhere else. So, these are choices made. The transfer portal is overflowing at this point for a reason. So let's not act like this stuff doesn't go on.
If you're looking to say you have a spot to fill, how would you go about it if you're Michigan? Grad transfer, late rising prospect, traditional transfer. Like, there are holes on the roster.
Certainly.
Depending on, and like, even those players who are transferring, you'd rather bring in whoever they might end up being. You'd like to be able to go deeper than 6.5 players next year.
Yeah. They could really use another wing. They could really, really use a reliable wing. Is that on the grad transfer market? Potentially. Michigan has had success with late signees and identifying people late in the game. So I wouldn't downplay the possibility of that. And sometimes I wonder if other places are now so busy chasing the transfer market that they forget to really take a good hard look at what might be available.
How much of the transfer market is a product of guys getting scholarship offers in April that they wouldn't have got in November also, though? That's like, it's such a weird... The system is so flawed where everything gets so hyped up because there's so few unsigned seniors at this point in the game, and so you get some pretty wacky situations. Yeah. And for every Karis LeVert, there's maybe like a Colton Christian. I think he committed late. Like, right. You just have all sorts of different situations in that regard.
Well, I would say if there's, if you see an up transfer, any kind of transfer that is a guy who has to sit out, that you think could really contribute, I'd use one on him because I think
you would be more apt to use a sit-out transfer.
I say if you at this point with the way Michigan runs, if you can identify a guy who could do that, it's worth doing because a year in the program sitting out is worth its weight in gold. I think Charles Matthews proved that. So I would always be in the market if I'm Michigan for that. But
I also don't buy this idea.
I would take a grad transfer.
That a grad transfer won't work. Yeah,
I would take a grad
I know
transfer.
Jaron Simmons did not have the best year and struggled to adjust, but a lot of freshmen struggle to adjust. But there's also Iggy Brasdeikis who comes in and plays 33 minutes a game, and for all of his whatever, he can't pass or he doesn't see the floor well. He didn't have a problem picking up the offensive system. If you get the right transfer, I think that a grad transfer could really make an impact. I also think it'd be easier to find a grad transfer wing who can make an impact over a point guard.
No doubt. Yeah, and if it's someone who has the evidence is there, this guy shot 39% on threes for 2 years in whatever league, then okay. He can shoot.
The top evaluation is go to their KenPom profile, go to the far right number, and if it says 0.4 something, you're taking a long look.
Let's roll. Absolutely.
I mean, that's got to I think a big part of the late recruiting is evaluating, self-evaluation. What are the actual holes in your roster? And if you have Xavier Simpson and John Teskey, and you can put 40% shooters around him, you're going to be all right.
Yeah.
That's what I would kind of look at, and that's what I think you need to strive for. Right now, Michigan has one 40% shooter on the roster.
Yeah. No,
and that was Isaiah Livers.
They have to address it. And the guys on the roster have to improve. I'd be really curious to see what they do if everyone goes, which I don't think is out of the realm of possibility. That they lose
Meaning Brasdeikis and Poole?
Brasdeikis, Poole, Matthews all leave. I don't think it's not impossible. It could happen. And in that case, it's but the entire identity of the program changes in 5 minutes. Well, not identity.
The identity of the program is
I just mean in terms
number
of
3.
Who you're expecting what from. Things like that.
Yeah. According to your odds, there's a 30% chance that happens. So that's not insignificant.
It's not. It could happen. So anything else?
No, I think that's pretty good. I think
fire Beeline or what?
Oh, yeah, just only can win 30 games a year. It's not going to cut it.
This dog is freaking out. Come on, Otis. It's okay, buddy. Okay. Well, that'll do it for this week's pod. We'll be back this weekend following Michigan State, Texas Tech. We appreciate everyone listening, subscribing, leaving reviews, telling their friends, subscribing to UM Hoops, subscribing to The Athletic. It's been a hell of a year, and one more weekend to go. So I will be out in Minneapolis and try to write a good story or two. What do you got coming up this week, Dylan?
We'll do a lot to kind of sift through the end of the season and start looking at recruiting and all that fun stuff that comes with the offseason.
Excellent.
April can be a busy time. It moves quickly, right? A lot of these transfer situations are sort of put together in not a lot of time, and then they come together. So we'll be following all that stuff and getting into it.
That's my favorite when a random name emerges. Everyone does deep dive. Who is this guy? Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. He's listed 8 schools, and then it's how's he fit at Michigan or how's he fit wherever, and then he's off to some other school and never to be heard of again.
Yeah, but you also have Jaron Simmons. No one even hardly heard of him, and then all of a sudden he was coming to Michigan, right?
It was the savior of that year.
A lot of moving in silence can happen in April.
Absolutely. All right, well, that'll do it. This was a long one, so we appreciate everyone hanging in. And be sure to tip your bartenders and your servers.